So Trump says that he's going to declare a national emergency for illegal immigration, and he's going to use troops, the military, to do mass deportations. What are the legalities behind that? What would have to happen?
About using the military. There is precedent for a president to use the National Guard. To use the military, like active duty, Army, Air Force, Navy, that would be a little bit more complex because there is actually a law that will prohibit that directly. Military assets like that are to protect the United States interests outside the United States. It's for war, basically. Because of that, and the dangers of a president using the military forces in the country against the people, right? It's just too dangerous. The Congress has found that's too dangerous to have a president to use the military forces against their own people. That's why it is extremely hard for a president to actually pull military forces to perform law enforcement, local law enforcement. Things like military in the border, like asking immigrants for information, checking documents, detaining people. So it would be very hard, extremely hard for, legally speaking, for any president to do that.
So for these mass deportations, what would have to happen so that the U.S. has legal authority to deport these immigrants that are already in the United States?
Well, the law is clear. People that are undocumented in the United States don't have a right to stay here unless they are granted some sort of lawful status. So the authority is already there. The Congress already stated who can stay, who can go, and the process for people to try to stay legally. And anybody who has a removal order is in a different situation as somebody who doesn't have a removal order yet. So this plan of mass deportations will, it's very likely that it's going to start with the people that already have removal orders, unexecuted removal orders. So there is a lot of people in the United States that don't have documents, of course. They have maybe cases pending, an asylum application pending, or they flew under the radar and they're here and they're not in any proceedings. And then there is other people that are already in proceedings, already have their day in court and lost their case. And they have a removal order from an immigration judge. Well, those people will be the easiest targets. Whomever has an order of removal that has not been executed. So a lot of people lose their cases, they get an order of removal from the judge, and then they try to appeal their case. And then the appeal, if it's not successful, then that person doesn't have anything else to do here. They have an order to be deported. If ICE pick these people up, they can deport them without them having a right to see an immigration judge. Why? Because they already have been seen by an immigration judge. They already had due process. So it's basically executing an order, like executing a warrant order, right? So those people will definitely be the first people to be picked up. There is a lot of people with removal orders, unexecuted removal orders, that are being, that are in something called OSSUP. I don't know if you know about that. So it's order of supervision. So basically, some immigrants, although they lost their immigration case, they lost their application with the court, there is some humanitarian concerns about this immigrant or their family, their citizen members' family, or they don't have any criminal history. Most of these people that are on OSSUP don't have any criminal history. So those immigrants, although they have an order of removal, ICE do not deport them automatically. What they do is they say, okay, you can come and check in with us every 6 months or every year, once a year, for us to see what you're doing, right? And every year they go, they present themselves at their local office, ICE office, and ICE let them be for another year. So every year is renewed that status. That status allows them to be here without being deported while it's valid, and also to have employment authorization pursuant to that order from ICE. Well, these people will definitely be the first people to go, for sure. When Trump was president the first time, a lot of people went to their appointments, at their local offices, ICE offices, for their OSUP checkup, and they were not let go. They came in and they didn't come out. There were actually a lot of news about it, of spouses, citizen spouses saying that he was doing everything right. But that's just the way it is. Once a person has an order of removal, that order can be lawfully executed by ICE. So those would be the first people and the easiest targets to get a mass deportation. Legally speaking, anybody who does not have a removal order is not as easy to be deported, as much as the president would like to do that, because there is due process, there is laws, there is, their rights. So those people will be harder for any president to deport. It's not impossible, but they will have to have their day in court if they have been here for more than 2 years. So that's the other thing. People that have been in the United States for over 2 years have acquired a right to have an immigration judge hear their case to see if they're eligible to stay under some section of the law. So those people cannot just be uprooted and deported without being able to apply for something in the immigration court.
So what about people who are already going through the immigration process and have some sort of application? What would happen with them?
Well, the same situation. If somebody has a process, an ongoing process, they have a due process right to be heard, to present evidence, to present witnesses, and to have their case decided by the immigration judge. And once the judge makes a decision, for example, today we had a final hearing on an asylum case. The judge granted asylum to my client, but the government also has the right to appeal if they believe the immigration judge made a mistake. So the process has to continue unless the law changes. So anybody who has a current ongoing immigration process, especially with the immigration court, cannot be deported until and so long an immigration judge orders a removal for them and they don't appeal and that order becomes final. Or if it's appealed, they cannot be deported until the BIA, which is the Appeal Court for Immigration, decides that matter.
Okay, and so if you have not been here 2 years yet, can they just pick you up and deport you?
Yes, it's called expedited removal. So the last time that immigration law changed was in 1996. It was a long time ago. You would think that law changes every year because of so many changes, but no, it's the same law since 1996. So after 1996, the Congress gave power to CBP, to ICE, to expedite remove people. That means to deport people, to remove people without letting them see an immigration judge. Before 1996, that was not possible. Everybody, even if they were here for 1 day, if they wanted to be heard by an immigration judge, they had that right. After 1996, only people that have been here for at least 2 years, or people that are, I believe it's 100 miles from the border, have a right to see a judge before their order removed. So ICE cannot just, okay, you're deported and take them out. They have a right to ask to see a judge. So ICE asks them, CBP asks them, when people have been here for more than 2 years, would you like to see an immigration judge and present your case, or would you like to voluntarily depart, or would you and if the person, the non-citizen, voluntarily relinquishes the right to not see an immigration judge, then they can be expedited removed, or they can take a voluntary removal from CBP or from ICE.
Okay, so for these mass removals, the first people that are going to go are people with removal orders.
Yes.
And then from there, I'm assuming it would be somewhat all the people that have been here less than 2 years.
Yes.
And then if anyone is already going through any type of process, they get to stay here until a judge issues a removal order.
Yes. For example, the case that I have the final asylum hearing today, that case started in 2018. So it took all these years for my client to have their final decision from the immigration judge, to hear their case, because of the backlog. The backlog?
Yes.
the backlog. There is a lot of cases pending right now in immigration court. And this backlog got worse the first time that Donald Trump was president, because his enforcement priorities, that's what changes in every presidency, were more broad than the prior president. The prior president, Obama, his priorities were aliens that committed crimes, non-citizens that committed crimes, and people that just arrived. He focused on those people, and there were a lot of people removed in the United States under President Obama, but those were the priority of enforcement for removal. With President Trump, he prioritized absolutely everybody. Everybody who was here with a status was a priority for removal. And that worsened the backlog, because people that before, if ICE encountered them, I said, well, you've been here for 10 years, you don't have any crimes. We don't need to be making the court more busy with your case. You're not a priority for enforcement. So those people that were encountered and let go, because they were lower priorities, became priorities, and ICE had orders to anybody that you pick up who doesn't have status needs to be in proceedings, need to be deported or need to be in deportation proceedings. So the backlog really increased because of that, because everybody was in proceedings. Now the backlog is so difficult, so behind that some people have been waiting for over 10 years to have their case heard. So we have a problem because we have a lot of people in deportation proceedings, well, removal proceedings is the technical word, but we don't have enough judges. And we also don't have enough attorneys for DHS, which are the prosecutors in the immigration proceedings. It's not just the immigrant and the judge. Actually, ICE has attorneys that go to these hearings to make sure that the non-citizens are telling the truth and they are eligible for the relief they're applying with the court. There is not enough of those attorneys either. And because of that, the cases take too long. So while the case is pending, a person cannot be deported, because then that violates their due process right to have their case heard. So yeah, they're technically kind of protected. Let's say people that are already in removal cannot be deported until they have a final order of removal.
Okay. If for anybody who is here in the United States illegally, what do you want them to know when they hear the story tonight?
About the using the military?
Yeah.
Specifically? Oh, well.
Or about these mass deportations. Like, what's the number one thing that you want to let anybody know who's here illegally?
Okay, well, first, the president cannot violate the law. So my advice is the law has avenues for people to stay legally. Just because somebody crossed without inspection, as basically somebody came through the river or the desert, or somebody came with a visa. A lot of people that are here with a lawful status are actually people that came with visas and overstay their visas. So if somebody's here without the authorization to remain here, I will strongly advise to contact an experienced immigration lawyer to see what other avenues they have to stay lawfully, and to apply for those avenues while they are still available, because there are many benefits that the new administration will be able to remove, like TPS. The advisors for President Trump have said that they are planning to completely take that. So anybody who is eligible for TPS should renew or should apply for it as soon as possible, because if this benefit is eliminated by the new administration, whomever already has it is going to be protected at least for 2 years more. So my advice is contact an immigration attorney, an experienced immigration attorney, to see what, if anything, you can do to stay lawfully, and apply for that while you can. For people that are already in proceedings, in deportation proceedings, for example, I will advise just to contact your attorney that is working with your case. Do everything your attorney advises you to do. Help your attorney get the evidence that you need to show that you're eligible for your case. Don't just leave. Don't throw everything in the trash and leave, because if you already have a process pending, an application pending, it is possible that you can win your case despite whomever is president. It doesn't matter the president, right? And also, it's very probable that many immigration cases, many removal cases with the immigration court will not be decided during the presidency of Donald Trump, because these cases are taking so long. So it doesn't, like, president will be president for 4 years, but immigration removal cases are taking over 4 years. So it's probable that although changes be made in the next 4 years, it's probable that when the cases are gonna be decided by the immigration judges, the new regulations and new case law is gonna be different, and maybe it's positive for them. Now, the people that have removal orders, this is a different situation. These are the ones that need the most an experienced immigration lawyer, because they are the most vulnerable. People that already have a deportation order because they didn't show up to court, or because they lost their case with the immigration court and they did not appeal on time. These people are the ones that need an attorney the most, because they will be the most vulnerable. And they should try to see if they can reopen their immigration cases if there was any violation of due process in their case, if their attorney was inefficient, which there is a lot of that. Inefficient assistance of counsel in immigration. So seek help and seek it fast. And my last advice, and I believe this applies for every immigrant in the United States, is make arrangements. Make arrangements for the worst case scenario. I don't want to scare people, but we have to be realistic. There is a possibility that a lot of people could be deported in the next 4 years. So my advice is seek help to put your business in order. If you have children, don't wait until you're detained by immigration to be detained and limited, right? To find somebody to take care of your children. So there are things that you can do. For example, here in Texas, there are formats available that the state of Texas has online for people to authorize another person to take care of their children, to manage them basically while they're unable to do it. It's a temporal authorization. I strongly advise immigrants to do that if they have children. Do this and do it now, because you never know. Another thing is about property. You know, there is a lot of immigrants that own properties, have savings, have land. If you're detained, it's going to be harder for you to dispose of your property, to liquidate your your assets. So that's something else that immigrants should take into account. Do powers of attorney to people that they trust to handle their finances or their assets for them while they're not available, or they're unable to do it because they're detained or deported. So that would be my advice for immigrants to prepare for mass deportations. Just contact an experienced immigration attorney as soon as possible. Put your business in order. Find somebody trustworthy to give power of attorney to manage your business, your assets, and definitely somebody trustworthy to take care of your children. But you should do it in writing to which person to take care of your children in case you're detained or deported.
Okay, perfect. Is there anything else?
Yes, actually, this is something that we were discussing, immigration attorneys were discussing in attorney groups about this mass deportation and the military. It's not just about immigrants. The first time that President Trump was president, the first time Trump was president, there was a case that we know personally. An immigration attorney was detained at the border. She is a U.S. citizen and an immigration attorney. And she was detained for hours because she didn't have her passport. So that is something not only could happen in the border or the checkpoint. With the plans that the new administration plans to do, this could happen anywhere in the United States. So this is not just going to affect immigrants. It's going to affect anybody who could look like they're not from here. And if all law enforcement, right, local and state law enforcement align with the new administration's aggressive enforcement policies, it could be very possible that U.S. citizens will be caught in the fire, basically in the crossfire. The U.S. citizens will be detained you know, interrogated about their status, and who carries their passport? Nobody carries this passport. So that's something that this plan of mass deportation and law enforcement, aggressive law enforcement against undocumented aliens, will also have an impact on U.S. citizens. So I will advise U.S. citizens also to be conscious of that and to have their passports with them or birth certificates with them, or at least have a copy on their cell phones, or tell their family members where your birth certificate is or where your passport is, because if you're detained in the middle of the street and you only have a driver license that doesn't show you're a U.S. citizen, you see what I'm saying? So that is something that is scary. Well, I don't want to say the word scary, but it's something that should concern U.S. citizens too, just like immigrants.